Now let's start off with the backstory for sonic.exe. Most of you probably know sonic.exe from the creepypasta, which also got turned into a video game. You may actually remember watching Markiplier play it back in the day. I know that was the first time that I was introduced to it. Don't run! There's also been a ton of animations featuring sonic.exe that clearly show his demonic personality. Now, many people believe that sonic.exe is a demon that is actually possessing Sonic, but that's not technically true. EXE is a completely different entity that is more similar to Fleetway Supersonic as opposed to the actual Sonic. I say this because just like Fleetway Supersonic, EXE is completely obsessed with Sonic, and also obsessed with unaliving characters and animals alike. Something that is unique about sonic.exe is that he just wants to kill for pleasure though. It's not like he's killing because he wants to replace Sonic or because anybody has done any wrong to him. Now, if you haven't read the creepypasta or played the video game that was based on the creepypasta, you'll probably have no idea as to why Tails is getting his head put on a stake or why Knuckles and Dr. Robotnik are dead to begin with. And probably even more confusing is why they are back as these zombie-like creatures. So first and foremost, you're probably all familiar with Tails and Knuckles because they are two of the protagonists in the Sonic the Hedgehog series in general. And while Dr. Robotnik is usually an antagonist in the Sonic series, in the sonic.exe mod, he's technically not a bad guy, whereas sonic.exe definitely is, considering that he murders each of these characters in the creepypasta. Now, to give you a little context and history into this, basically, the creepypasta takes place like this. There is a character named Tom who received a copy of this video game from his friend Kyle. His buddy Kyle told him to get rid of the game because he couldn't do it himself and to not play it. But since Tom was such a huge Sonic fan, he of course disregarded his friend's advice and booted up the game anyway. Now, Tom noticed something strange from the very start. The background screen was like this red, cloudy image that was super weird and ominous, and also the three playable characters are Tails, Knuckles, and Dr. Robotnik, which usually that third character would be Sonic, which was another red flag that Tom completely ignored. And it became very clear after playing with each character and going through their storyline that sonic.exe was simply chasing these characters down and killing them. What makes it even more creepy though is that each of these storylines were attached to some type of game, as if sonic.exe thought that they were playthings. We see this start out with Tails, where Sonic tells them that they're going to play hide and go seek, which basically just turns into Sonic chasing you down, and we assume lunging at you because the screen cuts out then and all you hear is this god-awful scream. We see this continue with each character, going over next to Knuckles, where he puts a rule on Knuckles saying you can't run. And then we see that Sonic plays this weird game of tag with Knuckles where he keeps disappearing whenever Knuckles gets close enough to touch him. And the game ends with you playing as Dr. Robotnik, where you're in this Castlevania-like castle and you are basically running through until Sonic finds you and kills you. Now, I explained the creepypasta and why these characters are dead, but that doesn't explain why they are alive and well in this Friday Night Funkin' universe battling Boyfriend. And the answer to this is actually really simple. It's because sonic.exe uses his power to bring these characters back to life and force them to do his bidding. And this relates back to a quote that Tom said in the actual creepypasta that reads like this: "This Sonic was a monster. A pure, evil, sadistic, all-powerful, nightmarish, demented monster. And all his victims, including Tails, Knuckles, Robotnik, and possibly Kyle, are just his little toys. And the game is the very gateway into his chaotic, nightmarish world and the very hell his victims are trapped in." So ultimately, the reason that sonic.exe has so much power here and is able to bring these characters back to life is because Boyfriend and Girlfriend actually stepped into his realm, that being the video game realm. And in this universe, sonic.exe is basically a god, like he tells us in the creepypasta. Now, a question that a lot of people asked me was, why are the characters missing at least one arm, or in the case of Dr. Robotnik, missing both his arms? And while I was doing research, I didn't find any definitive answers, but after learning more about sonic.exe, the way he views these other characters, I think I have a pretty good theory. I see sonic.exe as like a spoiled or a demented child. When I think of him, I think a lot of like Sid from the original Toy Story, and how he takes his toys and he basically mutilates and does what he wants with them. And I basically see sonic.exe in the same boat. Since he doesn't have value for these characters and he sees them as just his playthings, he doesn't mind ripping off an arm or ripping off both their arms or smashing their face in because they don't have value to him. They are simply tools that he is using in order to get closer to Boyfriend so that he can do him harm, and he doesn't really care about how they suffer as he's trying to reach that goal. And just to clarify that point, for whatever reason, even though sonic.exe is obviously very powerful, especially in this video game universe, he cannot technically touch Boyfriend unless he beats him in a rap battle. So it makes sense that he's using his minions to try to wear Boyfriend down or hopefully beat Boyfriend so that then Sonic can do Boyfriend harm. The next character on this list is going to be Lord X. For what we know about Lord X thus far, he is actually an extraterrestrial being originating from the space between universes, or aka the Void. And even though technically Lord X can take on any form that he wants, he has this weird fascination with Sonic the Hedgehog, which is why he looks like a monstrous version of Sonic. My theory is that this has a lot to do with Lord X's personality. He's very methodical, very intelligent, and I think he believes that if he takes on the persona of a hero, people will be more likely to trust him. And this ties in with that twisted personality that he has. He's like if you gave a very smart but demented child endless power. And in turn, he sees humans and other creatures as toys. And I mean this in a literal sense. Lord X likes to play games with his victims that are obviously rigged against them. And if they lose, Lord X will basically devour their soul and their actual bodies. I always say that Lord X is one of the scariest versions of sonic.exe because he basically will erase you from existence, literally. Next on our list, we're going to talk about Majin Sonic, and he's basically based off a famous Easter egg that was in the Sonic CD sound test. Even though Majin Sonic was supposed to be some type of joke, he's actually one of the more creepy versions of Sonic because he has this misshapen, smiling, human-like face and no pupils at all, making him look like something out of a straight horror story. Majin Sonic was actually placed in the game as an Easter egg by a man named Masato Nishimura, and he was also the landscape designer and also the voice of the Sonic in the Sonic CD. Majin Sonic's face is actually supposed to be based off Masoto's face. And a lot of people believe that since Majin Sonic is in the same mod as sonic.exe and all these other demonic versions of Sonic, that he is also a demon. But the name Majin doesn't actually mean demon or evil spirit in this sense. It's actually the nickname for Masato. And since Masato created Majin Sonic, he went ahead and gave him his nickname. And if you activate the Easter egg code in the Sonic CD, you'll actually get this screen that just has a bunch of Majin Sonics plastered over the screen. And that's actually what the death scene is based off in the Friday Night Funkin' mod, where you're facing Majin Sonic and lose.